Hey, what's up, Liron here. Today I want to talk to you about nature and watercolor. So when it comes to watercolor, I almost discovered that some of it is about letting nature take its course and letting nature do its thing. Not because that's the right thing to do, but just because that's the easiest thing to do. So let me show you. Now, you may have seen this painting that I shared yesterday, like the day before filming this, but it's going to be 2 days ago by the time you watch this. And this is a relatively small piece. I call it Stormy Night, but I'm considering renaming it. And I think it's really unique. I think it captures a lot of beauty that I don't always, I'm not always able to capture. And what you'll see here is an attempt prior to that that I would say failed. Now, it looked perfect until a certain point where it went off the tracks, and that is fine. So instead of trying to fix it, I ended up doing a new one, which is this. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So I am working on yet another larger piece, larger version, 4 times larger than the original, right? So that would be about, and the dimensions are, this is about 8.5 by 11. Right, so here we have 4 times, so that's 8.5. That's going to be 17 by whatever that is. I can't do math while filming; it's not going to work. But here's the interesting thing, right? So when you paint larger, the same physics are at play, and what ends up happening is the technique can be more challenging. Things can be a little harder to cover, like large areas. You just run into challenges you wouldn't otherwise. And by the way, I used a bit of pastels here. I kind of cheated. This is going to be in my upcoming course, Liron's Vault, but we'll talk about that in a future video. But I did, because I just didn't have a saturated enough color that can bring these lights out to be stronger. But in any case, this is nature. Just the larger the wash is, you can optimize your tools and materials. You can have bigger brushes, you can have a bigger water bucket, and you can make some prep work to make sure you're able to tackle it as best as you can. But the reality is, some things are going to be different when you paint larger. Now, why am I saying this? Because that's just a fact of, when you paint larger, things change. And a lot of people, they run into trouble when they do that, and I see a lot of frustration around that. Now, this frustration, I'm not going to say you shouldn't feel frustrated, because you can't really not feel the way you feel. What I will say is, some aspects of watercolor are about letting nature do its thing. And if that means that some washes are going to be messier, that is fine. If some washes are going to be imperfect, that is fine. Not because, imperfection is great and it looks better and it's natural and it's the right way to paint. Not at all because of that, just because it's an inherent reality of watercolor painting. And I would take it one step further and say, for those who are able to accept that, not because I told you so, not because I said you should, but just by understanding that's the reality, just by purely understanding that, those are exactly the people who take something like this, from this to that. And this also looked really off track at some point, okay? And I was able to, not as off track as this, but still, I could probably bring this to a similar point to that. Now, the reality is, the way we react to these things have consequences. And if the smallest thing that is outside of your control puts you into a tailspin, there's just going to be consequences to that. Once again, I cannot tell you don't go into a tailspin. The only thing I can provide you here is the understanding that because watercolor is just nature, it's water, it's paint, it's these kinds of things, there's a lot of it that is outside your control. If you can understand that and see it for what it is, for those people who can do that, there will be an element of bringing every painting to its completion. Not because you decide as a rule that you're going to see the painting through. Not out of an ideal, not out of a rule that is self-imposed to follow, because these things do not have power. These things do not reach your heart as an artist, right? Those things don't have real power. And that's why they're just really useless. Now, if you can see it for what it is, these clicks will happen, these things will happen, and you'll be able to take pretty much any painting to its point of completion, or decide, right, make the perfect decision just because you made it from that place of, okay, I'm gonna abandon it for a while, give it another try, see what happens, right? Maybe that's the decision you want to make, and that is perfectly fine. But I do see a lot of people frustrated and going into a tailspin because the paint doesn't do what they want. What they don't realize is that this is almost letting nature do its thing, and a big part of watercolor painting is seeing what nature does when water and paint mix, without trying to change it, without trying to force anything, but rather working and dancing with it to get to your result, right? I hope that makes sense. I know it's a little vague, but these are kind of the things that have been on my mind lately, and the results, I think, speak for themselves. And you know, do with it what you will. This is not an advice, it's not a recommendation. I'm just sharing with you some things that were on my mind as I am moving towards painting a larger version of this. And I know it'll bring a lot of people comfort to know that this isn't a one-to-one. This isn't, I was able to paint this one perfectly, right? And then it translated directly to a larger piece, right? Even though I just painted this painting, I'm still having a bit of a challenge with this larger version. And the real challenge is to see it for what it is. That's the real challenge. The real challenge isn't the technique, it isn't the you know, because you can work at it, you can improve it, you can do a lot of things that will bring it to the point where you want it to be. I hope that helps someone out there. If it does, perfect. If this doesn't mean anything to you, that is also perfectly fine. These things are very personal. These things are really a matter of the very unique way you see things. Nothing here is, you know, the way you should understand it or the way you should do it. But I guess thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I want to thank everyone who supports me over on Patreon. Check it out. There are some exclusive processes there. Keep an eye out for my Liron's Vault course coming up, probably Q3 of this year, where there's going to be this process and a bunch, like 15 or so, 10, 20, something like that processes. You can see every brush stroke, and there also will be shorter versions of that. But in the meantime, if you are looking to let go, enjoy the painting process, get the results you want, check out the frustration-free watercolor course. And if you're looking more for realism, or if you already have the frustration-free watercolor course and you're wondering what the next step could be, that could definitely be the watercolor realism course, where I show you a few very simple, I wouldn't even say guidelines, but very simple just facts of painting that will help you achieve realism every single time. You can then take it to whichever direction you want. You can decide on everything, the stylistic choices, the way it feels, the mood, the atmosphere, the colors. This is all up to you. But I'm going to show you a path or a way to achieving a realistic impression that you can just take and change and run with and get the results you want. But in any case, thank you so much. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.